You are listening to Perfect English with Danny. Improve your English every day. Never stop learning. Welcome to a new episode from Perfect English with Danny. This episode is all about grammar, and we will talk about first and second conditionals. But I will be honest with you, I will focus more on the second conditional. But first, let's think about it. Why do we need conditionals in the first place? Can we just speak English without using conditionals? Well, that would be a lot difficult because a lot of the situations we base on a condition. If something happens, I will do this. If this happens, I will do that. And we will learn later on about the second conditionals when we start to imagine things and when we talk about unreal things. So, without further ado, let's get cracking and let's start talking about the first and second conditionals that are crucial pieces of grammar you need to know in order to write well and speak well. So, let's start with a very simple example. I have two situations here where we get to use the first conditional and the second conditional. Now, Tom lost his wallet and he's looking for it all over the place. His roommate Joe came to help and he said, "If I find your wallet, I'll let you know right away." What do we understand from this? We understand that Joe is actually searching for the wallet, and there is a possibility that Joe finds this wallet before Tom. And so Joe is just trying to reassure his friend, and he's telling him, "If I find it, I'll let you know right away." Well, first of all, let's take a look at the structure Joe used to talk about the situation. He said, "If I find your wallet, I will let you know." So if I find, he uses the present simple with the if part of the conditional sentence. And for the second part, for the result, what will happen if I find your wallet? I will let you know. In the result part of the sentence, he uses will and a verb in base form. I will let you know. So here, what do you think we use the first conditionals for? In this sense, we know that Joe is actually searching for the wallet, and we know there is a big possibility that this might happen. And if it happens, the result is very simple. If he finds the wallet, he will let Tom know right away. So the first conditional, we use it all the time when we talk about conditions that are possible, that can happen. It doesn't matter if they happen or not, because if I know for sure that something is going to happen, I don't need conditionals at all. If I know something is going to happen, I simply say, "I'm going to find your wallet and I will let you know." That is, I'm 100% sure. But even if there is a big possibility, but there is also a possibility that I don't find your wallet. So that's why I use if. There is the if part. That's not 100% sure. So remember, yes, we said there's a big possibility, but there is still a small room that this thing might not happen. And that's why I say, if I find your wallet, or actually in this case, Joe said, if I find your wallet. So real possibility, you really think that might happen? You can use the first conditional. We use present simple with the if part. We use will and the base form in the second part. And now we'll get to the real deal, the second conditional. Now, in another situation, Joe said to Tom, "If I found a wallet in the street, I'd take it to the police station." What would you do if you found a wallet in the street? That was just a conversation. Well, first of all, do you think that there is a wallet missing? And do you think actually Joe is searching for a wallet? When he said, "If I found a wallet in the street, I'd take it to the police station." Well, I don't think so. Joe here is not talking about an actual wallet or an actual search. He's talking about a situation that he's imagining. What would you do if this happened? What would you do if that happened? And we talk about that all the time. What would you do? Imagine something like that happened. What would you do? So in this situation, this is the second conditional, and it is misleading in one way that we used, as you could see, the past simple with it. Joe said, if I found a wallet in the street, and you know found is the past of find. And since somebody uses the past, you assume they're talking about the past. Well, generally that's true, but when we use it with conditionals, we are not talking about the past. Joe is not talking about what happened yesterday or what happened before now. He's talking about an imaginary situation that could happen anytime, even if it doesn't happen. But he's not actually talking about the past. We just use the past simple here, if I found a wallet, just to show that this is not a real situation. This is not a real condition. Not like the first example when Joe was actually searching. Joe is actually searching for the wallet and he says, if I find it, I'll let you know. It's possible, it's real, it's happening. But this one, they're just sitting around talking about different things. One of these things they talked about is a situation like this. And Joe said, if I found a wallet, I'd take it to the police station. What would you do, Tom? You see, it's just an imaginary situation we use in our conversations all the time. What would you do if you won $1 million? A very common question. What would you do if you became president? What would you do if you found a treasure? Would you give it to the government or would you keep it? What would you do if you could fly like a bird? Would you tell everybody about the superpower you have, or would you keep it a secret? So, all of these sentences I used, if you had $1 million, if you became president, if you could fly, all of these situations are not real situations. They're situations that exist only in our imagination. And we're imagining things. Well, if this happened, I would do this. Like what Joe said. If I found a wallet in the street, I would take it to the police station. And now let's talk a little bit about the structure. If, the part with if, we use a simple past verb. Found, the past of find. Now obviously it could be any other past simple verb. You just make sure you put it in the past to let the people you're talking to know that you're not talking about a real situation. You're talking about an imaginary situation. And in the second part of the conditional, or the result part of the conditional, which is also imaginary, we use would do something. In this case, Joe said, I would take it to the police station. Not I will, because I will makes it possible, makes it real. But this situation, it's unreal. The past simple doesn't mean it happened in the past. Maybe I said that 1,000 times, but trust me, this is one of the things a lot of people get confused by. Why are they using the past and they don't mean the past? Well, actually, this is one of the things we can do in English to step away from reality, to talk about unreal situations. We use the past instead of the present, but the meaning is present and future. When you say, if I became a president, well, that's not in the past. That's the present or the future, but you're imagining. You think it is not possible. And here we come to a very important thing, that it is not about, don't think about the first and second conditionals as right and wrong. There's no right and wrong in first and second conditional. It depends on what you want to say. As it is the case in most other grammar concepts, it is not about what's right and what's wrong. Don't try to think about grammar as this is the right answer and this is the wrong answer. The most important thing is, what do I want to say? Now, let's come up with a scenario. I want to talk about the future, my future, and I want to talk about $1 million. If I have $1 million. Well, what do I want to say? For me, I think it's possible. Yeah, why not? I can have $1 million. And if I have the $1 million, I will start a radio station, and this radio station will be dedicated to teaching English and other languages and stuff like that. Yeah, why not? I am ambitious. I think that is possible. So I can simply say, if I have $1 million, I will start a radio station. You see here, I am ambitious. I think it is possible. I don't have it yet, and I may not have it. But the important thing is what I think, what I want to tell you. When you hear something like this, you will know that I am an ambitious person. I'm an optimistic person. I think this is possible. And that's why I use the first conditional, not the second conditional. But if I change the situation, well, I think it is impossible. I don't think it's possible for me to have $1 million. There's no way that can happen. Even it might. But what do I think? That's the most important thing. I don't think that is possible. So I say, if I had $1 million, I would start a radio station. So you see, here the meaning changes because I change what I want to say. I change what I think. If I think this is possible, if I'm being optimistic about it, I can simply use the first conditional. If I'm not optimistic, if I'm kind of pessimistic, or I'm not going to say pessimistic, I'm just going to say if I don't think this is a possibility, if I think this is kind of imaginary, I can simply use the second conditional. But let me say that again. Didn't you notice that both examples talk about future situations? They're not talking about past situations, and this is something you need to keep in mind. First and second conditionals, yes, they use different tenses, but they both talk about the same time, which is the present or the future. Now that we can understand the main meaning of the first and second conditionals, let's talk a little bit about mechanics. Now, we said that we do not normally use would in the if part of the sentence. We say, for example, I would be very frightened if somebody pointed a gun at me. Not if somebody would point a gun at me. We don't use would with the if part, with the condition part of the sentence. Or if I say, if I didn't go to their party, they would be upset. I said they would be upset in the result part, but I don't use it in the if part. I don't say if I wouldn't go. So, you see, we do not normally use would in the if part of the sentence. And pay attention to what I said. I said we do not normally use would. Usually, we simply use the past simple. But you can use if with would when you ask somebody to do something for you, especially in a very formal way. For example, you say, I would be grateful if you would let me know your decision as soon as possible. So you see, here we used would with if. And this is not imaginary situation. This is just being polite. Okay? So again, this looks like the second conditional in a way, but the meaning is definitely not the second conditional. We're not talking about unreal situations. We're not talking about imaginary situations. I'm just being super polite in a formal way. And I said, I would be grateful if you would let me know your decision as soon as possible. So, that out of the way, let's not restrict ourselves to using would in the result part of the conditional sentence. We can use could, or we can use might. They're also possible instead of using would. For example, if you took more exercise, you might feel better. We can simply say you would feel better. If you say you would feel better, that is like 100% result. But if you say you might feel better, that is a possibility. You can say if it stopped raining, we could go out. But unfortunately, it's not going to stop anytime soon. I don't think that's possible, and we won't be able to go out. And now we'll get to that, to the unreal part. And one last point I want to talk about is the use of when. When can be used instead of if. Sometimes, if you don't want to talk about condition. If you say, for example, if she comes, I will tell her everything. Here, it is the first conditional, of course, but here what I'm saying is there is a condition, I will tell her everything if she comes, but that tells you that she might not come because I'm saying if. If you don't want to say if you know she's coming and you're going to tell her the moment she arrives, it's just about time. It's not about if it's going to happen or not. So if this is the case, instead of if, use when. You can say when she comes, I will tell her everything. So it's not if, I know she's coming. When she comes, I will tell her everything. Well, that is possible in the first conditional, but pay attention, that is not possible with the second conditional. We don't say, for example, they would be upset when I didn't go to their party. That's unreal situation. When is real. It cannot be used in unreal situations. So here we have to use if. We can't say, for example, what would you do when you were bitten by a snake? When I was not bitten by a snake. Why did you use when? So you see, here it's an unreal situation. We have to use if here. We can't use when. We have to say, what would you do if you were bitten by a snake, not when you were bitten by a snake. So you can use when instead of if. The meaning is different, of course, but you can do that in the first conditional only. And now with that out of the way, I want to focus on the idea that the second conditional is unreal. And that helps you a lot because unreal can mean not possible. At least that's what you think. Remember, again, that's the essential thing about anything in grammar, especially the conditionals. It depends on what you think. It's not about scientifically real or not. It depends on what you think. So, for example, Tom would read more if he had more time. Now, I'm saying that because I know this is not real. I know this is unreal. At least that's what I think. Tom would read more if he had more time. The meaning obviously is present. But what am I saying here? Tom is not going to read more because he doesn't have more time. That's the reality. The reality is Tom doesn't have time, so Tom is not going to read more. Tom will not read more. Or let's take another example. If I didn't want to go to the party, I wouldn't go. Well, this is actually not real. If I didn't want to go to the party, but guess what? I do want to go to the party. I want to go to the party. I wouldn't go, but I want to go. You see? So here I'm talking about a situation that is unreal. Let's get another example. We wouldn't have any money if we didn't work. But the reality is that we have money because we work. It's the opposite of what we say in the second conditional. And that is very commonly used in English. Now, sometimes it is unreal because it's impossible. It's simply impossible. Like when we say, if you were in my position, what would you do? Well, if I were in your position, I would do this, I would do that. Well, it's impossible. I can't be in your position. I'm not, and I can't be. So, I'm just saying what I think. And we use that to give advice. And the advice we give using the second conditional is mild advice, is not strong advice. And it's very good if you know that people you are giving advice to do not take advice very easily. They don't like it when people patronize them and tell them you should do this or you must do this. Trust me, most people don't like it. So you could use this instead. If I were in your position, I would do this, I would do that. Now here, I'm not sounding superior. That is a very useful way you can use to give advice to people, especially with those you know they don't take advice easily from others. So that was all about the first and second conditional. Remember, the first conditional is about real, possible situations. The second conditional is about unreal. I'm not going to say impossible. I'm just going to say unreal, imaginary situations, sometimes impossible. And it all depends on what you think and what you want to say. When you want to use first or second conditionals, make sure you use the structure that conveys the idea or the thing you want to talk about. Don't think about it in matters of right and wrong. Grammar is not like that. So, this is your host, Danny, saying thank you very much for listening to another episode from Perfect English with Danny. I will see you again in the next episode.